Today I am going to discuss with you the story We Are Not Afraid to Die If We Can All Be Together. Student, this story is written by Gordon Cook and Ellen East. Okay, firstly I will tell you where this journey is started from. The journey has been started from Plymouth to Cape Town. है ना, and you can easily find the place Plymouth. It is just a southern part of England, and then in the first phase he just stopped at the Cape Town, and later he went to the east, and then he faced a lot of difficulties, and then the ship in which the writer was traveling was hit by strong gales. Strong gales means the strong winds. Now, in brief, I will tell you the story. In this chapter, the writer narrates his thrilling journey across the sea. He wanted to go around the world by sea in the same way Captain James Cook had done about 200 years earlier. In July 1976, the writer set sail from the seaport of Plymouth in England. His wife Mary, his 7-year-old daughter Sue, and his 6-year-old son John were also with him. For this long journey, the writer had built for himself a huge boat that was 23 meters in length. He called it Wave Walker. It looked like a ship. The writer hoped to complete his journey round the world in 3 years. It is to be a 255,000 kilometer journey. The first phase of the journey was about 105,000 kilometers. It was up to the South African seaport of Cape Town. It passed off very pleasantly. Here the writer took with him 2 sailors named Larry and Herb, because the southern Indian Ocean is known to be the world's most stormy ocean. The second phase of the journey was 150,000 kilometers. It was to be completed on reaching Australia. On 25th December, the writer's Wave Walker was in the southern hemisphere, southern Indian Ocean. तो स्टूडेंट्स, ये जो स्टोरी है वी आर नॉट एट डाई इफ वी आर ऑल टुगेदर, ये गॉर्डन कुक ने लिखी है, और उसने जो है अपनी जर्नी प्लाईमाउथ जो इंग्लैंड में का सदर्न एक सी पोर्ट है वहाँ से स्टार्ट की, और उसने अपनी वाइफ जो मैरी और अपने एक बेटा जिसका नाम जोनेथन था जो कि 6-year-old बच्चा है, और उनकी एक बेटी जो कि डॉटर है, उनका नाम है सुजेन जो कि 7 years old है, और उन्होंने ये तय किया कि एट द एज ऑफ 37 कि वो एक जो है वॉयज एक समुद्री यात्रा करेंगे, और तो उन्होंने जो है प्लाईमाउथ से ऑस्ट्रेलिया तक जाने का एक सफ़र तय किया, और ये पूरा एक वाटर के थ्रू, एक ओशन के थ्रू अपनी जर्नी उन्होंने स्टार्ट की, और जो है इसके लिए उन्होंने 16 years है ना जो है रफेस्ट वेदर में भी अपने जो शिप है उनका जो बोट है जो उन्होंने बनाई थी, जिसकी लेंथ 20 मीटर हाई 10 मीटर थी, और 30 टन उनकी बोट का जो है वेट था, और उन्होंने अपनी जर्नी प्लाईमाउथ से शुरू की, और फर्स्ट फेज उनकी जर्नी का प्लाईमाउथ टू केप टाउन था। तो इंडियन ओशन 3,500 किलोमीटर टू द ईस्ट ऑफ केप टाउन, तो फिर उन्होंने इंडियन ओशन में जो है, जब केप टाउन से इंडियन ओशन गए और ये 3,500 किलोमीटर, द फर्स्ट डे ऑफ द न्यू ईयर 1977 was celebrated in the ship itself, but on the second day, 2nd of January, the weather suddenly became very terrible. Their ship was caught in the stormy sea. The storm continued for 3 days. The ship was badly damaged. The sea water flowed into it. The ship could go down into the sea any time. But each one, the writer, his wife, the 2 little children, and the 2 sailors showed unusual courage and survived the storm. Little John said, "Daddy, we are not able to die if we can die together." The chief object of this chapter is to give an account of this very courage. On the evening of the 6th January, they spotted a tiny island in the sea. It was Amsterdam. It was only about 65 kilometers wide and only 28 people lived on it. They welcomed the writer and his group on reaching there. So students preparing for the voyage. The writer started his round the world voyage in July 1976. His wife Mary, his son John, and his daughter Suzanne also accompanied him. The son was only 6 years old and the daughter was 7 years old. The writer was then a 37-year-old businessman. He wanted to follow the same route that Captain James Cook had taken 200 years earlier. तो बच्चों, उन्होंने उनके तो राइटर जो है वो 37-year-old पर्सन थे और एक बिजनेसमैन थे, और उन्होंने वो सेम रूट फॉलो किया जो कि कभी कैप्टन जेम्स कुक ने, जो कि 200 ईयर्स बैक जो जर्नी स्टार्ट की थी, वो उन्होंने भी उसे किया उस जर्नी को। फॉर 16 years both he and his wife had been dreaming of what the famous explorer had done. They used to spend all their free time in improving their seafaring skills on the British Sea. They made a huge boat 23 meters long. It was made of wood and weighed 30 tons. It was a beautiful boat and was made with great skill. Months were spent in fitting it out. They tested it in the roughest weather they could find. और उन्होंने टेस्ट किया रफेस्ट वेदर में भी इस बोट को, और इट वॉज टू बी ए 105,000 प्लस 150,000 किलोमीटर जर्नी की। बच्चों, उन्होंने प्लाईमाउथ से केप टाउन तक की जर्नी जो है 105,000 किलोमीटर की थी, और केप टाउन से ऑस्ट्रेलिया तक का डिस्टेंस जो था 150,000 किलोमीटर था। दे हैड प्लान टू कंप्लीट इट इन 3 years, और ये 3 साल उन्होंने तय किया था कि ये जर्नी को कंप्लीट करेंगे। द फर्स्ट पार्ट ऑफ द जर्नी, दैट इज 105,000 किलोमीटर, वॉज कंप्लीटेड प्लेजेंटली. दे सेल्ड द वेस्ट कोस्ट ऑफ अफ्रीका एंड रीच्ड केप टाउन. Now for the second part of their journey, they were to enter the world's roughest sea. It was Southern Indian Ocean. Here they took 2 sailors to help them. One was Larry Vigil. He was an American. The other was Howe Segler. He was a Swiss. तो उन्होंने केप टाउन पे 2 सेलर्स को लोग होते हैं जो कि शिप में वर्क करते हैं, कैप्टन की हेल्प करते हैं, तो उनको हायर किया, और उनका नाम लैरी विजल था जो कि एक अमेरिकन था, और एक हॉब सेगलर था जो कि स्विस था। Now beyond Cape Town, it was 2 days after they had started from Cape Town, strong winds began to blow. They kept blowing continuously for the next few weeks. The writer was not worried about the strong winds, but what worried him was the size of the waves. They went as high as the main mast of their ship, up to 15 meters. On December 25, they were 3,500 kilometers east of Cape Town. The weather was terribly bad. Yes, they had a Christmas tree and enjoyed Christmas in a wonderful way. They enjoyed the New Year's Day also in a spirited manner. They hoped that the weather would change soon. It did change, but for the worse. On January 2, there were huge waves. The ship rose to the top of each wave. They had put up only a small sail, storm jib, in the front of their ship. The screaming sound of the wind was painful to the ears. In order to slow down the speed, they dropped the storm jib also. They secured everything tightly with the ropes. They attached lifelines, ropes to their life rafts, life-saving small boats. Then they put on their oil skins and the life jackets. तो बच्चों उन्होंने ऑयल स्किन्स पहन ली, ये एक तरीके से रेन कोट टाइप का होता है, और लाइफ जैकेट्स पहन ली जिससे कि कोई भी डूब नहीं सकता, ठीक है ना, उसे पहन करके। और उन्होंने लाइफ लाइन से अपनी जो बोट थी, लाइफ रैफ्ट, जो स्मॉल बोट्स होती हैं, उनको बांध दिया था। और उन्होंने जो है इतनी बड़ी ह्यूज वेव थी जो कि मास्ट तक ऊंची थी। 2 जनवरी की बात है ये। At about 6 p.m. there was a dreadful silence. The wind stopped blowing and the sky grew dark. Then there was a growing roar. A huge cloud was seen close to the back of the ship. But it was not a cloud, it was a terrible wave, almost twice the height of the other waves. It appeared perfectly vertical. तो बच्चों एक वेव जो थी, जो कि इतनी ऊंची थी जितने कि शिप का मास्ट होता है। शिप का मास्ट का मतलब ये होता है कि एक पोल होता है शिप के बीच में जो कि सेल को सपोर्ट देता है। अच्छा, now caught in the storm, the roar changed into a thunder. The writer thought that their ship would ride over the wave, but there was a dreadful explosion that shook the deck. A torrent of water broke over the ship. The writer's head smashed into the steering wheel. He was thrown overboard. He was aware that he was sinking below the waves. He accepted the fact that his end was near. He was losing consciousness and he felt quite peaceful. But then suddenly his head hopped out of the waves. He saw the wave walker a few meters away. It was turning over into the sea. The masts were almost horizontal. Then a wave threw it upright. The writer's lifeline rope was still tied to the ship. It pulled at him with such a jerk that he was thrown back onto the ship. Now the waves tossed him around the deck like a rag doll. His left ribs cracked, his teeth were broken, and his mouth was filled with blood. Somehow he found the steering wheel and tried to control the ship for the next wave. There was water everywhere on the ship. He could feel that the water had entered the lower parts of the ship, but he couldn't dare to leave the steering wheel and go down to investigate. Suddenly, the door in the deck floor opened and Mary appeared. "We are sinking," she said. "The lower decks had smashed and there is water everywhere." The writer asked Mary to take the wheel and he himself went down to see what could be done. Struggling with the storm, when he went down, he saw Larry and Hope trying to pump out the water. Broken pieces of wood were hanging all round. The right side of the ship had bulged inside. The right side of the ship had bulged inside. Clothes, crockery, jars, tins, toys were floating about in the deep water. The writer had swum and half crawled into the children's cabin. "Are you all right?" he asked. "Yes," they said. But Sue said that her head had been hurt rise, but the writer had no time to attend to it. He had to plug the hole from the where the water was gushing in. If that was not done, the ship was sure to sink. Debris was floating around the cabins. It blocked the hand pumps. The electric pumps was also not working. It had short circuited. The water level in the ship was rising threateningly. Luckily, they had another electric pump. The writer connected it to the out pipe and it started working. He was able to plug in big holes also. तो राइटर जैसे मैंने आपको बताया कि वो जो शिप था वो बैटरी डैमेज हो गया था शी वेव्स की वजह से। तो राइटर ने जो है जहाँ पे भी क्रैक्स आ गए थे उनको प्लग किया, है ना, वहाँ पर एक जो वाटर प्रूफ एक कैनवस होता है उसे फिक्स किया इस तरह से वाटर, और एक जो पंप से एक आउट पाइप को जोड़ा और जो पानी भर गया था उसे बाहर निकाला। और लैरी और वेसल जो है मैडमैन की तरह लगे रहे पानी को बाहर करने में। द नाइट ड्रैग्ड ऑन, दे हैड टू कीप पंपिंग एंड स्टीयरिंग ऑल नाइट। They sent radio signals for help, but there was no reply. It was not something surprising because they were in a remote corner of the world. Sue's had swollen alarmingly. Her eyes looked terribly black, and she had a deep cut on her arm. When the writer asked why she had not told of her injury, she said, "I don't want to worry you when you were trying to save us all." तो जो सू है उसने नहीं बताया कि मेरे यहाँ पर जो है मेरी आर्म में और मेरे आई लिड के ऊपर जो है एक डीप कट हो गया है ना। और तो दोनों बच्चों ने नहीं बताया कि वो जो है काफ़ी दे हैड ए बिटर एक्सपीरियंस, और जो प्रॉब्लम फेस कर रहे थे कि वो नहीं चाहते थे कि उनके पापा का ध्यान डाइवर्ट हो और वो जो है रेस्क्यूइंग जो वर्क है उनका वो किसी तरीके से हैम्पर्ड हो जाए। Search for an island by the morning of January 3. The water level was quite under control. It was 15 hours since the wave had hit the ship and they had survived. Now they could have 2 hours rest in rotation, but still a lot of repair had to be done in the lower parts of the ship where all the wooden frames had smashed. It did not seem possible that Wave Walker could be able to reach Australia. The writer checked his charts. He calculated that there were 2 small islands a few hundred kilometers to the east. One of them was Amsterdam. Now their only hope was to reach these spots in the vast ocean. But that could be possible only if the wind stopped and they could put up the sail. If it was January 4, they had been pumping water continuously for 36 hours now. 36 hours. Now only a few centimeters of water was left. They could not put any sail on the main mast. The pressure could tear apart the damaged ship. So they hoisted only the storm jib, a small triangular sail used in the front, and started for where they thought the 2 islands were. Mary found some meat and biscuits for them. They had their first meal in almost 2 days. We are not ever to die. The sense of relief was short-lived. At 4 p.m., black clouds began to build up behind them. The wind became stormy and the waves rose higher. The weather continued to deteriorate throughout the night. By dawn on January 5, the situation was again very horrible. तो 5 जनवरी को भी सिचुएशन और हॉरिबल हो गई. द राइटर वेंट इन टू कम्फर्ट द चिल्ड्रन. तो राइटर जो है जो उनकी जो बंक थी बच्चों की उस पर गए. जॉन आस्क्ड, डैडी आर वी गोइंग टू डाई? The writer tried to assure him that they would succeed in their efforts. At this, the boy said, "Daddy, we are not able to die of dying if we can all be together. You and Mummy, Sue and I." तो उस बच्चों इस बड़ी प्रॉब्लम में भी जो है वो अपने पापा का जो है उन्हें एनकरेज किया, मोटिवेट किया, है ना। उसको बोला कि भाई हमें मौत से डर लगता है, अगर हम सब परिवार के लोग एक साथ हैं तो। द राइटर कुड फाइंड नो वर्ड्स टू आंसर, ही डिटरमिन्ड टू फाइट द सी विद एवरीथिंग ही हैड। ही डिसाइडेड टू stop the ship, keeping its undamaged side to the side of the oncoming waves. He decided to stop the ship, keeping its undamaged side to the side of the oncoming waves. That evening, the writer and his wife sat together, holding hands. More and more water was getting in through the broken planks. Both of them felt that the end was very near. A ray of hope. By the morning of January 6 जनवरी को वेव वॉकर had come out of the storm. The wind had eased. The writer went in the chart room and made a study of the charts and made other calculations. The best he could know was that in 150,000 kilometers wide ocean, they were looking for a 65-kilometer wide island. While the writer and his wife were making calculations, Sue moved painfully up to him. The left side of her head was now very swollen. उसकी जो लेफ्ट आई थी बच्चों को सूज गई थी, सूखी, और हर blackened eyes were narrowed to slits. Sue gave the writer a card she had made. On it was written, "Oh, how I love you both." So this card is to say thank you and let's hope for the best. At about 2 p.m., the writer went on the deck. He asked Larry to steer the ship at 185 degrees. He told him that by following that course, he expected to see the island at about 5 p.m. Then he went down and dozed off in his cabin. The happy landing. When he woke up, it was 6 p.m. and was growing dark. He thought that at that speed they were going, they must have missed the island. Just then John came there. Sue was right behind him. "Can I have a hug?" John asked. "Why am I getting a hug now?" the writer asked. "Because you are the best daddy in the whole world and the best captain," replied John. "Not today, John, I am afraid," said the writer. "Why, you must be," said Sue. "You have found the island." "What?" the author shouted. It's out there in front of us," said the two together. तो उन दोनों बच्चों ने बोला कि देखो वहाँ पर वो आइलैंड उन्हें मिल गया है। अब वो तो वहाँ पर वो अपने शिप को रोक सकते थे। "It's out there in front of us," said the two together. The writer went running to the deck. He could see the complete outline of the island of Amsterdam. It was only a dull piece of volcanic rock. There was little vegetation on it, but to him it was the most beautiful island in the world. They anchored offshore for the night. The next morning, all 28 inhabitants of the island cheered as they helped them to come on the shore. तो बच्चों इसके साथ ये स्टोरी फिनिश हो जाती है, और इस स्टोरी से हमने ये सीखा कि किस तरीके से जो है डिफ़िकल्टीज़ को भी हम ओवरकम कर सकते हैं अगर हम साहस से काम लें तो। ठीक है ना। थैंक यू वेरी मच फॉर लिसनिंग दिस वीडियो, और आई होप सो कि you must have enjoyed it. If there is any query, so please you must ask me. And chapter already we discussed in the classroom में ये चैप्टर डिस्कस हो चुका है। अब रिवीजन के दौरान मैंने आपको बता दिया, और थैंक यू वेरी मच।